that owns Quick Trip locations in La Crosse, Wisconsin. They're in Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Hans came onto the company in 1999 and has grown the company to over 600 stores. They're adding about 50 stores a year, and they've added about 50 stores a year in the past. And he's really progressed into the eastern Wisconsin market, which is my territory for DOT. So it's just one of those things when you do highway projects, you tend to hit gas stations, and Hans owns half of those. So Hans is responsible for the strategic growth plan for the retail locations. He also works on shopping centers. So they do from 100 acres to 5-acre developments that the Zietlow family also owns. And I'll turn it over to Hans, and he's going to give you a pretty nice perspective of how that's going to work from a owner.
Well, while they're throwing my first slide up there, if you're from Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, you probably know us. I actually don't own the company. My cousins do, so I'm like the humble servant that goes out, but maybe not that humble, but I do build the stores. If you work with somebody in transportation, you probably know my name. You probably only got to meet me if it's really a difficult project, because otherwise, 95% of the access projects we do go through our project managers, and they run really smoothly, and everybody likes each other. But then, there's 5% that are difficult, and rather than put our people in those spots, I like to be in those myself. And so if somebody's going to make a mistake, I'd rather have it be me. If somebody's going to have to use their outside voice just a little bit, I'd rather have it be me, and then try to do that in a very judicious way so that the next time we come around to get a permit, we haven't made enemies. And I think that works out pretty well. I'm going to change what I was going to say a little bit, because Pat, all the technical stuff I was going to say was good, and so I'd agree with all of that stuff. The interesting thing is the one truck stop there in Mount Pleasant, we'd actually bought that one along with some other stuff, and they were going to turn it into a strip mall, so I wish I would have known I'd have told you that. But they were really happy to buy that, and when this access thing came through, they said, hey, what about this? And I said, I'll gladly take the property back, because they just announced a huge hospital was going in behind. So all the property down there is just skyrocketing, and it's really good for the state of Wisconsin, southeast Wisconsin, to be in this spot where our property values are skyrocketing. We're happy to be in that process. So we operate about 650 convenience stores, and we own all of them. I've built or rebuilt probably all but 30 of them. And then we also do some shopping centers. And you can see what we'll talk about, negotiating this planning access. How do you fight fairly but still protect your company and not upset people on the outside? The value of access, the reasonable access. How do you put a value on access? There's really no way to do it until the access has changed, and then see how the business model works. Loss of access, and then planning ahead for the next 20 years. First slide here, this is a shopping center I did in Rochester, Minnesota. And I bought the land in 2007. Things were going good, and I bought the 108 acres for $5 million, and I thought that was just a super excellent deal. And then the economy went, and I thought, well, how are we ever going to do this? Well, we'd already bought the land, and so I thought, well, we're going to put the infrastructure in anyways. If anybody's going to come in here, they're going to have to do it. So we had $5 million into the land. Then we had another $7.5 million into moving 800,000 cubic yards of dirt on site and then putting in the roads. And then I went to negotiate with the city of Rochester. That's where the Mayo Clinic is. They don't give money away. They only take money back because everybody wants to be in Rochester. So then when we did our traffic study, which took about a year, if we had not already owned the property and if we were under contract and this was our due diligence period, we probably would have had to walk away because we couldn't have gotten through this traffic study. But we already owned the farm, and it was a farm, so we owned the farm. The newspaper asked, what do I want to do with it? And since right next to it, there's a place where if you ever go to the Mayo Clinic and get a heart valve, it's made in that building right there. So I told them it was going to become an experimental goat farm, and they didn't know if that was true or not. And so it's 2008, and we're into this thing for $13 million, and then I find out there's another $1.7 million in off-site improvements, and then as we're working through that, we put in this stoplight, we did this one, then they wanted to finish it out this way, and then they were going to put a stoplight up here, but then not. And so it got really expensive, and I was really nervous on this. But we went ahead and put in the streets and so on and so forth, and I had a friend there who's just retiring from Rochester. His name is Richard Fries. He was the director of public works. Everybody complained about him, but he was an honest and a fair guy. He was just a super tough negotiator. But The city gave us this stoplight right away, even though there was only about 15,000 cars here. Here we got 25,000 cars, but it was a county. And they were going to give us a stoplight here, but they wouldn't give it to us right away, even though it was kind of met warrants, maybe didn't meet warrants. So what they gave us is this 3/4 access here. And then I want to talk about the value of the property then. The most valuable property is where the stoplight is going to be. So I was going to put my Kwik Trip here. I put it here instead because here's where the driveway is. And we get a right in, then the full access out. And this 3/4 access almost really works like a full access because it catches every turning movement. So you can't take a left out here, but if you're going to go south, you're going to come down here to the light anyways. If you're going to go north, you're going to go up here. And then how does that affect the value? Of course, I sold the middle piece to Costco for almost nothing so that we could get this thing going. Oh, don't tell them that. I got a lot of money for the Costco site. That's the story. And then when I found out they were going to put their gas right there, then I knew for sure that I wanted to go here. So I thought that this was the most valuable site, and then McDonald's took the second most valuable site. Aldi took the third most valuable site, and the rest of it filled in. If I would have got a stoplight here, this would have been the most valuable site, and that's where the drugstores wanted to go. We're going to get the stoplight this year, but look how this development happened. Everything went down by the stoplights, and now that we're going to get a stoplight here, and we already promised to pay for it, the rest of this is all sold out just that quick. So that's the value of access. Developers come in, they don't want to know that the access is going to be there because it might not. They want to know that the access is there. So for a developer, when that stoplight's in place, those people will jump on it. And most developers, when they're doing these more expensive things, it's a group of people. Like our site selection committee is just one person. And you're looking at and if that stoplight's already there, it's a lot easier to do it. And so that's where the value is. And so these off-site improvements created all the value for the site. And so this is probably an example of a really good one. If I could change it, I would have got that stoplight first. And so that's how those big ones work. And then there's the tiniest one. This is the more traditional one. This is the corner of not Main and Main, but Main and Second Main and Plymouth, Minnesota, or Plymouth, Wisconsin. And traditionally, you want to have 2 access points. You talked about internal access, and for a convenience store more than any other retail operation, internal access is huge. You want to have people come in through the canopy and out a separate one, so you have this counterclockwise turning movement. And that works pretty slick. So we got a full access, a full access, a full access. And that's how I came to, we got 2,000 driveways, 650 times 3 on average is that number of driveways. So this is the classic one, and that's relatively easy to do. And something like this, we could imagine that on this main drag, you could have a median sometime going there. That's why it's important for us to try to be on a side street where one of them is small enough that you're always going to have that full access. A mistake that convenience store operators used to make is they wanted to be right on Main and Main. Well, if both of them carry a lot of traffic, good traffic engineering is going to require medians to go both ways, and you're going to be right in, right out on both of them. And we certainly have plenty of those that were mistakes, you know, from the past, and lots of retailers are stuck in that spot. So now we'll oftentimes just go off the corner. Here's one that's similar in Waukesha, and here, because they're both a little busier, the access is way down the back. This was one of the first ones that I worked off with a fellow with Waukesha County, Gary Evans, pretty tough guy, but a nice guy who's now retired. So I thought I'd throw his name out there, kind of miss him. Some corners are so busy, you don't want to be on them. This is one is in Sheboygan. So Calumet and North. And then it's an odd angle too. I know there's a name for this. They call it semaphore or something like that. There's engineers here. What do they call those? Okay, I just made up a word. But you couldn't go on either of these corners because there was really no full access point. So we went back to where we had a full access point here. And so we ended up with 4 driveways. The reason convenience stores want to be on the corners, they want to catch all the traffic on both roads. So 18,000 cars here, 15,000 cars here. So they're north of 30. We can catch them both here by going in on the corner. So on these angled ones, we go in something like that. One of the old myths, it wasn't a myth when people started doing it, but it is now, is people think that you need to have the front of your store facing the traffic. And if you don't have any business and there's no customers, that probably works. But if your site gets really busy, you really have to have the action part of your site facing the access so that internal access works well. Now this one's also in Sheboygan, and this one was a relatively easy one to do because most of the access was already handled ahead of time. But it's up on 43 and then Calumet on the north end. So you see that we face south down towards this county road here. This is where the old Menards used to be. And this is Hardee's, and this is the Texas Roadhouse, and I can't remember what that is. So you'd think that we'd face this way towards all the traffic, but the full access points are here, and this is just a right in, right out. And so trucks and cars can come in this way, but the vast majority of the circulation is here. So the cars circulate here, and the trucks circulate this way. And because of that, this one does so well. If we had flipped it around, it wouldn't operate. And so we're getting a little smarter that we always want to try to face towards the good access. And the access, just like Pat said, sometimes is on, it's not going to be on the arterial, sometimes it's on the collector, but a lot of times it's on the frontage road, and that's where it's easiest to get in and out. So it's not necessarily bad planning to put yourself in that spot. This is a fun one. I like to talk about this one. I used to live in Economwalk for like 3 years, and I used to walk on this bike path down here when I made my phone calls in the morning, and there was nothing down here except for the Target Distribution Center and Mr. Slow's. Does anybody remember Mr. Slow's? Okay. So I would walk down to Mr. Slow's at lunch too and get a burger, and this was owned by a really nice lady. I can't remember her name. Their family was from the Clark Oil Company. She donated all the money for the YMCA, but we bought this one for $1 million, and that was the first time I spent $1 million on a piece of property. And took my uncle out there, and he's looking at it, and he says, "Hunts, I think you're buying a piece of property for your friends." And I said, "No, this is really going to be an excellent corner. This is going to be the center of the universe. This is where Pabst Farms is. This is really where we want to go." So we built this one, and so this is Highway 67. When I first moved there, it was 2 lanes, then it was 4 lanes. Now it's 6 lanes. This is Economwalk Parkway. It hasn't gone all the way through, but it will eventually go all the way through. And so we're not on 67, we're not on the Parkway, but we're on the backage road. And we still wanted to face this way because it was pretty quiet out there. So they gave us a right in front of the canopy, and then the full access out. And when we can do this, this works pretty slick as long as this is a right in. And so this one did really, really, really well. And then we thought, well, we'd like to have another store in Economwalk because, one's good, two's got to be better, right? So this one came available on the other side. and we've done this a couple of times, and then there's a company down in the south called Racetrack that does this, and they don't necessarily go on the hard corner, but they'll be on opposite sides on these huge traffic corridors. Because when you drive, you're coming home, you don't want to turn cross traffic through 6 lanes, in and out, and then come back and do this. You're probably not going to do that. If there's that much business, now we got a going to work store, and we got a coming home store. Unless they're doing the reverse. In this case, this is their going to work store, and this is their coming home store, but you could have either one. Now, if I had my druthers, I'd have one on this one and then one down here on the next interchange, but that's Pat's Farms where all the super fancy stuff was, so we couldn't go there, so we went here. And this one took quite a while to get the access permit, believe it or not. And so here, Economwalk Parkway, we've got the access road through, and then, so this one you'd say is going in backwards, but I would say it's going in towards the access. And so people know who we are, they know what the front of the store looks like. It's not like a scary neighborhood back there, there's something hidden, it's still Economwalk. The meanest thing in Economwalk is the cats. So it's a really nice place, and now what happened there is we had this store that was doing, I'm just going to make up a number, let's say it was doing $100,000 a week. So I thought there's more business there, so we'd do this one and then we'd do this one. Then you'd probably like have 50 and 50, right? But we ended up with 75 and 75. So there was a 50% more that was just blow by because we were there. And now it's easier for people to get in and out. And then you think of all of this traffic turning that we avoid. And so this is something we'll probably do more and more and more of. It's either that or build a 20,000 square foot convenience store, but then you could get lost in the back and you wouldn't want to do that. Only one access point there too, and it still works, doesn't it? You know why only one access point works? Because it comes to the business end of the store. Now, we're smarter now than we used to be. And we are. When I started 20 years ago, Kwik Trip was, we thought Super America was great, Holiday was great, and we were just trying to figure it out. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not an attorney. I mean, we figured this stuff out on your own. You're spending your own money, you're nervous about this, how does this stuff work? And then you got all these other stores to look at it. So when you're spending your own money on it, and if it doesn't work, it's not your boss, it's your uncle and your cousins that are upset. You really want to make sure it works. And so one of the that we, oh, there's a bad one. I'll go back to the good one. On something like this works pretty well because Everybody knows we're there. Our access is as good as somebody else. If your access is worse than your competitor across the street, you're probably in a little bit of a difficulty. If everybody has the same access, it's not really a problem. But for this one, it really circulates pretty well. So now I haven't been in this one forever because I don't live there anymore. So I come in off the street and come back out. So this one says Kwik Trip and Pabst Farms on the back. So the community of Windsor wanted that too. So now we got Kwik Trip in Windsor. And so maybe that's going to become a theme. But this one was a difficult one for a number of reasons. Conemaught's a pretty tough town to work in, pretty demanding, so on and so forth. But we were worried about this access point. When we get a property under contract, this is probably the one thing, if you're the person that gives the permits, that you can do to help development the most, is try to be efficient with the time. So we have 6 months to get our approvals. And if we don't get our approvals, then what do? You have to have money go hard, or you have to just buy it and hope you get your permits. And so any really good development is going to be contingent upon getting your approvals. And generally the thing that takes the longest is traffic, especially if you do a traffic impact analysis. And sometimes that drags it out. Then the sellers expose themselves that they're going to sell it, and they're all nervous. And then we don't want to buy it until we know we can get it. And then the municipality gets upset, and then the tensions rise, and then people start going, ah. And so the best thing to do is if you can get these things moving quicker, knowing that developers are really on a timeline. And it's not so much the money that starts getting them nervous, it's losing that time that it takes to get there. And that's what makes me the most nervous. So those are some of the good examples, and that's what we're looking for access. And I'm going to pick on some that were built before my time, that were built incorrectly, and but we didn't know it at the time. So this is, and these are some real life stories that we went through with the Department of Transportation in Wisconsin. So this one was just 1 year before me. So this is Highway 41 and tons of traffic. Wisconsin Avenue, tons of traffic. Stoplight here, a new stoplight here. So we bought this one from Woody Garrow Oil. And it has a full access driveway right on the interstate ramp. Well, everybody knows that the new DOT requirements is going to give you a full access point 200 feet off the interstate. So I remember when I first came here, I go, well, I don't know how long this was going to last. So we checked in it to see if we had access out the back, and we really don't have access to the backage road. And so it just kept staying there and kept staying there. And then this development happened, and then the town of Grand Chute required a traffic study, and then they're going to fill in this whole median. And we didn't quite find out about it until there was a public meeting, and then I'm going, oh man, we're stuck. So, so I was a little upset that we didn't know earlier, but it was really hard to argue that you get to keep it open, because if you argue against good engineering, you just kind of look silly. So you got to admit that, okay, there's really no way around this. Unless we can get a backage road in here, it doesn't work. So, so I stomped my feet quite a bit on, okay, we need to, it would be nice to know earlier. So what we did is we bought this site here. Now, granted, we were over a barrel, and the fellow that owned this could charge us quite a bit more because he knew we didn't have any options, but at least there was another option for us to go. And so we're way better off being here at the stoplight and making a left turn in and going there than here. So what we're going to do with this one, how do you really know what the value of access or lost access is? So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to operate it with just a right in, right out until this one's built. So that'll be about a year. Then we'll just see, here's where our volumes were here, and here's where our volumes are here. And then I promised some nice folks at the DOT I'd share that information so that we can all know, is that really what's going to happen? Because I think that, especially if it's like an individual mom and pop and they don't really know how it's going to work, they're going to scream, I'm going to go out of business. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Usually you're not. But then we'll have some hard data on that one. So even though I stomped a little bit, we're probably going to be in a better situation. But in the end, it was built too close. So that was kind of a bad thing that turned into a happy thing. Here's another one interesting. This one was built incorrectly as well. This was, the guys that built these they're not even around anymore, so I'm not like bad-mouthing anybody, even though I really am. So this one faces Oneida, and so this one was built by a fellow who decided he didn't need a driveway permit. He thought he had a driveway to the state highway here, but he didn't. So he just had the full access point here. And this one was built, I think, in 96 or 97. And so again, you're really super close to the highway. So when the designs came out, and worked with the folks up in the Northeast, and they're nice people, and they really honestly worked really hard at trying to figure out how to keep full access here for us. Then we met on this, and in the end, again, if you're arguing against good engineering, you kind of look silly. So yeah, this is probably going to work. So what we're going to do with this one is it'll be a 3/4 access, and we'll just see how it operates. Now the difficulty with this 3/4 access is there's not a backage road out to full access unless you go all the way through the neighborhood, which I'm not sure that too many people will do. So this will be a good opportunity to just put that metric on it, measure it. Now for us, we got 650 stores. If we lose a store, we just lose a store. It's not going to really affect anything. Probably one of the things I think that's important for people that handle the permits or the condemnation process is, for us, we can do that and we can get, and I can get into a room and we know where we are. And for an individual mom and pop, you know, then their whole life is just in your hands like that. So I always think about them, how do they do it? Because it's like a conundrum. So all of a sudden your access has changed and then it's a conundrum. But then you don't know how this thing works. So it's a conundrum, then it's wrapped in an enigma. And then they look at you guys and they say, and it's in a bureaucracy, and then it just gets all scary and then people get nervous. But for people like me, I kind of understand it and so on and so forth. And again, for all of you people that work for the DOT or the county, you never got to see me like a happy guy because we're always fighting over access. Here's another one. Again, I didn't build this one. This is an old one. This is up in Wilson, I think. So again, 2 access points to a truck stop, and look at, they're both right next to the ramp. So that's where they did it. I mean, they used to believe as close is better. Now, if we were to do something like this today, we would try to make the standards and have it, you know, the access points back here. So this one's going to have a median that goes about to here, and then there's a frontage road that comes back in here. This one we already got the metrics on. So the diesel gallons drop by 40%, and then we'll see over the course of the year if they come back. So then you can just run these metrics on them. And it's tough when you have old sites that weren't built for the way things work today. And, you know, so I feel bad for us, but I feel worse for other people that can't afford to do it and so on and so forth. And so as we move into the future, we always look to what's the access going to be like, not just for right now, but down the road and in the future, so we get these things built correctly. So, so these access meetings, I think is kind of fun. I mean, where are people going to come and talk about access? Everybody thinks it's horribly boring. I texted the thing and sent it to my wife. She just gave me one of those emojis that with the green one with the tongue sticking out. But I think this is interesting because I look at this as big dollars. It's huge dollars for our company and our family. Here's an interesting one. This one I threw in here. This is not our properties, but this one is one of the things that is really valuable in selling property or developing is knowing what the future is going to be like. And so this is properties that I tried to buy both sides. So it's the Interstate I-90 and 51 going north. So I was going to buy in Madison, so just north of here. I was going to buy this one from a guy that I bought another truck stop from, and I assumed that we were going to get a stoplight here, and I heard we probably weren't, so we didn't want to do it. And then there was a truck stop here, and so without knowing what's going to happen, you really can't invest in it. So you got these 2 truck stop areas, and I just saw an auction piece. You know, this whole piece right now is going to be put up for auction. But because you really don't know what's going to happen there, it can't get redeveloped. And maybe somebody does know what's going to happen. We own a piece down here too that we got when we bought PDQ. And again, you don't really know. So until you know, it's pretty hard to develop those properties. And I do want to have some time for questions. So I'm watching my watch, and I'm going to have just one more slide. So this is one of my favorite DOT stories. When I was just a young whippersnapper, we had a store right here in the Storm Pond, and then I met a guy from the Northeast. One of my favorite people from the Northeast, his name is Tom Buchholz. He was a young guy too, and it was a tough one, and we got this all whatever figured out, and I really liked him. He's not here, is he? Don't tell him I really liked him, but he seemed like a really nice guy, and then I met the other guys up there, and they're all nice guys too. And eventually we bought this piece of property from an old car dealer named Art Pomeranian, and he didn't like anybody, but he liked me because I'd go and talk to him, and he'd start talking in German. I'd talk back to him in German, and he finally decided to sell me the property. And so I know the DOT worked with us to create this this development. So it's us and Panera Bread in here, and it works really good. And every time I drive through there, I think, hey, that was a kind of a fun thing. It was hard, but in the end, it turned out pretty good. And then we've got these, right, they're called roundabouts, right? Do you know what developers call them? Circles of confusion. So we always go to the Green Bay games, and we're getting excited because it's skating time. So my wife loves to drive there, and then I drive back. But we always stop in Amaro because she doesn't want to drive through here. Now, I'm used to driving through here, and I know I can get through here faster now than I could when the stoplight was here. But the vast majority of people haven't figured that out yet. It's hard for trucks, but it's harder for people to catch on. And so we used to really get nervous and excited about those, but not so much anymore. But my wife still won't drive through this one. So now you know the developers call them circles of confusion, but I think people are getting used to them. So that's kind of what we do. If you had some really good pointed questions that would like stump me, or make me nervous would be great.